like an Arabic name. And she got to me and went, yeah, I don't know. And I've never felt so superior to my classmates than I did in that
Oh, you
moment.
felt superior. I would have felt very left out, but I guess that speaks to the differences between us. Speaking of the
Mm.
differences that have been created in this draft, pretty standard that we do see that Lucian and Zoe getting taken away. GameWard do take away that Lucian most of the time they're on red side. In response, obviously, Inax's Kalista that we've seen him on twice now, I want to believe. Very impressive performances both times. Gangplank as well. We've seen Melonic play that. Melonic actually famously played that very different Gangplank build than we see normally. It was the Death Stance build that we saw just
Mm.
basically operating kind of like a Hullbreaker Scion, just go side lane, rattle down the turrets. With all these bans coming through, I'm expected to see maybe a Wukong final ban as well, just to take away from Memento, maybe Viego as well. He heavily favours the Viego, but I feel like if the Wukong is left up, he will pivot towards that. It's going to be Yumi.
Ooh.
I think in that case, probably Mirage takes Wukong or Viego here.
Stands to reason those have been the two priority picks, even with the nerfs that are coming through. Wukong still far and away one of our top tier champions. Gwen as well left up on the board. Gwen also did receive a couple nerfs coming into the patch, but still a champion that very worthwhile picking up if you can get your hands on it and if you're still feeling comfortable with the champion. But the Wukong first pick just sets you up so nicely for really anything. You've got great engage potential with Memento, great skirmishing early on when you hit that level 6 marker. I expect it to be the Viego trade. Try and take yourself an ADC here as well. There was one of them that I'd mentioned early doors that hasn't been taken away. Can't quite recall which one that is at this point, but Kalista Ezreal, Lucian, Zeri already pinched out of the pool. That AD carry area is looking very, very diminished already.
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, on Inax obviously has a lot of games. He has
Senna, that's
one.
it.
Yeah, Senna's the one. He has one game on Kaiser as well. Important to note. I don't think you quite pivot into the AD carry with the pool being so pinched here. It's going to be Checo lad figuring out his Ari here. Now the question is, do we see some of the picks that we know to be good into it, like the Lissandra, Veigar maybe for Rangjun, both champions. I think we've seen him. We've seen him at least play Veigar, I believe. Wouldn't be surprised to
Yes,
see that taking a response.
could also take a Yone as well if he was feeling particularly
True.
spicy with it. Has played that Yone previously. The Veigar also got a little bit nerfed here on this patch. Now I'm cheating because this is the first day on 12.11. Veigar nerfs are on my second screen. They do lock in the double, or they do lock in the hyper carry bot lane though. So
like
for
this.
Cody's done a lot of pressure put down in his facet early on. He's got to have a lot of control over the laning phase to try and snowball into the late game. With this Renata Twitch setup, means that you go for that late game style. You've got a lot of power in those team fights. Obviously, with, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, Kraken Slayer getting nerfed, the Twitch build maybe a little bit worse off, but overall you can still default to completely different build path and opt into a no Kraken Slayer for the most part and still have a lot of damage early on.
Yeah, I don't mind the Gwen blind here as well. I think on 3 here, being able to dictate the pace of the draft going forward, so it needs a response here. You can kind of ban out some of the counters here, and then Bad Luda going to be somewhat pinched in terms of what he can pick. Bad Luda obviously having played so far. I remember him having a pretty disappointing game against Nuke. I can't remember what the matchup was though quite. But yeah, getting rid of
I
the
think it
Jax
might,
here
it
makes
may have been the
sense.
Gwen versus Akali. I feel like
Yeah.
yeah, that would have been the Gwen versus Akali matchup
I think
where it
Akali
was actually
probably the
Gwen.
other thing you ban here as well, maybe. I think getting rid of the Jax, you probably
Yeah,
want to get rid of the Akali as well. Vlad, maybe, but I don't think Bad Lulu plays it. Yeah.
does make sense. Things that can battle with the Gwen also getting a slight buff with the way that Gwen got nerfed this patch. Her armor and MR, whilst inside the Shroud, got nerfed early. So, very early on. She got 20% at all ranks previously. That's been now taken down to 12 and then scaling up to 20 at rank 5. Once again, a W, an ability that you put things into a lot later on. So you don't tend to get those resistances back until you reach that level 18 marker, which is worth mentioning for a Gwen in durability patch is something that can happen.
Yeah, it's gonna be that Fiora getting banned away instead of the instead of what they would have banned otherwise. I think it makes sense. Bad Lulu's played a game of it, relatively proficient on it, even though he didn't have the best performance on it there. I can understand banning it, perhaps not as scared of Izakali as they were of his Fiora. Expecting to see expect to see AD carry bind here and then probably play for the support counter pick on 5, but they could go
Well, they
both
have
ways to be fair.
they have complete information. They're against Renata Twitch bot lane. They know what they're going up against. It's more so what they feel up against the team as a whole. What do they feel more safe blinding as a role versus the solo lanes specifically? I don't know how I feel about the Xayah here just yet. There's a little bit of dive on that Wukong, but Xayah versus the Twitch later on is going to have a fairly easy time outranging, trying to outdamage as well. They can't take away the Rakan here, which is, I would expect, the pick on 5 for Camilius, just the power of that 2v2. You're able to really battle down in the early stages up against the Mirage Elyandra bot lane. But now they've got to pick their solo lanes, right? They've got to pick their answer up against Gwen, their answer up against Ahri. And it is that Akali that you mentioned early on that could have got banned away. It's going to be picked up by Bad Lulu instead. Now the answer for the mid lane, they may well look to opt into double AP solo lanes, get that nice damage profile between their jungle and solos. And the Lysandra is still open and available if they want that too.
I like Veigar here. I think Galio you could go as well if you want to be roaming towards this bot side as well, setting up plays in the top lane as well, potentially as well. Veigar could have been an option as well, potentially. Although if it does get engaged upon by this Rakan that you're expecting to come by the Ahri as well, could be a bit difficult. But I think in terms of the space you create, could have been a good pick as well. But no surprise, like you said previously, Rude Dude, that Rakan kind of quite telegraphed. I think in terms of the draft that we saw from GameWard, it's they've not really done much in terms of setup anticipation. I think they're just very much telegraphed what they've done, but I think they've got on a draft that they're probably very happy with. Talk to me about how these teams stack up.
Very good 5v5 team fighting comps on both sides. Mirage Elyandra have a little bit more agency trying to play in side lanes. They've got the Twitch invisibility that may catch teams off guard. You've got Hero's Entrance as well to make a bit of a statement across the map if you're able to use Rangjun's mobility to get those plays going. There's a lot of tools open to both of our teams, and I would like to see some early setup around this bot lane for Mirage. Make sure that your bot lane doesn't get completely obliterated. Because they did go for some solo lanes, having seen the Ahri, having seen the Xayah, excuse me, that are fairly dive-centric. The Xayah didn't have the most value, it was just the Wukong she was getting Featherstone value out of, but then picking Galio plus Akali into it, the Xayah value did increase.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think in terms of how you brought it out initially, I think there is a little bit of help in terms of the important thing to note here is in terms of if you do get engaged upon by this Galio, by this Wukong, I think another thing is if you get open up on by the Twitch, obviously the Twitch is going to want to, at a certain point, open up into other lanes. If you have the Xayah set up in the mid lane for a 1-3-1, for example, or even points beyond where the mid lane turret is and the Xayah is catching waves in mid, I think it can help mitigate a lot of that engage option. Be the case that I think a lot of this game, I'm predicting one of the things that will happen around the third or fourth dragon is that a similar scenario like that happens where Twitch opens up in mid and Zarya is able to survive because of the ultimate and stuff like that. I can see that happening. But yeah, I think in terms of how the early game plays out, I'm expecting Shekolad to be able to get that priority in the lane that he's used to. I'm hoping it's not the case that we saw. I can't remember who it was against, but Saken played a game of Galio this split whereby he had permanent priority and was just like winning the lane up CS against a matchup you would just have never expected it to happen into. I don't expect that to be the case this game. Shekolad, for me, individually, is one of the strongest performing mids in the league at the moment. I think expecting to see he just finds these like very, very crucial flanks and just team fights and just in terms of his prescience, I think is someone his presence and his prescience that we see a lot of the times in these games is very, very impressive. Don't expect that to be any different here. Expect to see a very entertaining game nonetheless with the 5v5. It's the first time we've seen direct. We're both going to do this exact same thing today. But for now, you're going to have to wait a few minutes or so before we get into the game. But we're going to be coming to a break, and we'll see you very shortly. We are going to be heading on to the Rift here. We see GameWard encased in their red cavernous jail cell as they are descended on remand onto the Rift. 5-1 now, looking to, for the very moment, tie up LDLC at 6-1. Whether or not that'll be changed will be decided later in the day, but they're against a Mirage team that has struggled in many ways. I think it would be fair to say, Rude Dude.
Yeah, they've certainly had their fair set of worries, fair set of concerns. Not particularly finding too much out the gate this split. Again, they've had a fairly difficult set of matches, but coming into Super League, it doesn't start out any easier for Mirage, that's for sure. They do have a game up against Solari tomorrow, and then a game up against Go next week, or at the end of the week, sorry, so potential for those games to go their way. But they need to try and upset, honestly, here, if they want to make a real statement. This would be a pretty big upset, 1-5 versus 5-1, right? GameWard coming in the expected victors, or the expected victors from this game. And if they can find a win here, then, you know, that really could set some upsets and set the tides for a great Super Week.
Speaking of expected victors, I was expecting more of a victor in the mid lane from Rangjung. Galio, not a pick we'd expect him to have played. Not really the similar style to what we've seen from him. We see a lot of DPS mages from him, stuff like the Azir is what we've seen. Obviously going for more of a roaming style now, looking to export pressure outwards. It has been the case that he's been someone who makes up a large portion of that damage share for all the team's damage portfolio. See, this time they're looking more towards Cody's son, I'd imagine, as an early engagement between the two. Camilius, a little bit of damage onto Raxo here.
And this is level 1 Zyrakon. You both take double, you just all in. You can see double combat summoner spells on both sides. You quite frequently opt into the exhaust or an ignite, even for a Twitch, just because it gives you that extra dueling power if you end up going for an assassination with the ambush a little bit later on into the game. Melonic trying to use a bit of a early level spike here. The E coming through just as a little bit of an extra boost to the damage that he's able to pump out versus Bad Lulu. And just zoning off the wave a little bit there, getting a good little skirmish down. Our junglers, though, both starting on the top side, making their way down to this bot lane. Expected point of priority for both of our junglers to make sure that, A, the Twitch can get through the early game, and the GameWard side, the bit that the Twitch can't.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very important, like you're saying, you stifle the attempts to aggress forward in the game and scale up for this Twitch. It's obviously... Traditionally, you look at lanes like the Kalista and your Renata is your traditional lane like this. We see it a lot more often, but we're starting to see more and more of this Twitch Renata. Basically, the hyper-scaling version of that. Obviously, the fact that you can kind of... The bailout brings you back to life and whatnot, gives you a lot of safety in those open scenarios whereby you're trying to open upon the enemy team with the spray and pray.
And it does act pseudo-similarly as well to the Twitch, or to the Kalista Renata. The essence of Kalista Renata is you try and put down the stacks, and then you can rend when you're dead and bail out, and you get back to life. The similar thing can be said for Twitch as well. If you're unable to get the max stacks of the poison down before you end up getting the entirety of your health bar getting taken down, you then have the bailout to work in potentially an extra auto attack that would be execute damage. You pop the expunge, you get the kill, and you come back to life. So similar styles of approach for a little bit for this bot lane duo. Of course, the attack speed given off of bailout, you don't want to tend to be saving that cooldown until the very end, because you want that attack speed for the duration of the Twitch's trade.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the more finite details, or rather not actually, very much a big detail in how that matchup gets played out. But in terms of how for the matchups, I'm liking the early aggression from Melonic. Obviously, some of the Akali Gwen matchups we've seen, I think specifically back to that, was Bad Ludo versus Nuku, actually. I think we spoke about it earlier. I felt like the early advantages level 1 to 2 weren't really extrapolated and pushed forward far enough where I would be comfortable. But we'll see. Melonic, rather seasoned in this matchup, I can imagine. Obviously going for that early aggression, squeezing out a slight CS lead thus far.
And a good wave spot as well for him, forcing Bad Lulu to extend a little bit up in the laning phase potentially, putting a little bit of pressure on the Akali in the early stages. Definitely not bad by any means. And for the most part here, a fairly quiet early game once again. Both our junglers kind of just cross-clearing. We've seen Memento opt into a base already, has got that Sheen, is back out onto them, completing his second clear, where we just see now that Akabane actually spent a little bit more time out on the map to get a slightly better base with Sheen plus Longsword, as opposed to just the scene that Sheen that came through for Memento. And with the extra time on the map, unfortunately, Memento not particularly being able to do anything, then jungler is now not even at parity, Akabane with just that slight advantage. So nice little early game steps that we can hope to see GameWard utilize.
Yeah, 100%. Like you're saying, I'm expecting this level 6 mark to be an exchange of some stern words in this top lane. As both top lanes get that level 6, it's going to be a case that Bad Lulu wants to find that engage, get that solo kill. Really what you have to do to accelerate this matchup. Otherwise, you just let Gwen become that side lane monster that we know it for. Dragon does get started up here by GameWard.
Priority in the bot lane for GameWard. In Axe and Camillus pushed in that bot wave. Have forced Cody Sun to spend time clearing those minions out of the other side of the coin is that he just misses out on a ton of gold in exchange for a Drake that may not go their way. So the much more conservative play is that Cody just gets the wave, Inax and Chameleus hover back down to the spot side with the wave now going toward them in their favor. And with Akabane likely going to be heading up toward that top side, getting the wave pushed back to you. Certainly puts you a little bit more safe than you may have anticipated, but we have to remember this is a deep engage actually from the bot side. Not too much going to come through.
A little bit of return damage. Obviously, a lot of stacks going on to Inax there means a little bit more damage. Interesting enough, I wanted to draw your attention towards the first acquisition in terms of items purchased by Melonic. He has gone for that Verdant Barrier. We see, I believe it only builds into Banshee's Veil, right?
Yeah, that is Banshee's exclusively.
That is interesting to me because typically I would think that I don't necessarily think he's going to full build that. I'd imagine he sits into it. If he does go for it first, it would be confusing to me somewhat because I would typically view Akali as a champion that would be quite easy to block that Banshee's or get that Banshee's shield out from.
Yeah, you're right. This is hopefully at the very least just to sit on it and not really do too much with it else. You do end up stacking up a little bit of magic resistance. Good for the 1v1. But you want to head towards that Riftmaker. You do want to make sure that you hit those item spikes fairly early on, and even a little bit later on you can maybe sell the Verdant Barrier for something a little bit more magic defense oriented. A couple of those items did get buffed as well. There's a lot of options open to Melonic with where he wants to go, but I think that for the laning phase it's fairly smart.
Yeah, completely. I think it's something that I think a lot of teams don't necessarily do. I think this might be slightly overkill in terms of I feel like it's a bit of an overinvestment, but I'd like to see a lot of teams, like for example, I was speaking to a few people about this, like Cloth Armor is only 300, you know, it has a resale value of 210. And a lot of matchups, even if you're not going to build something that necessarily builds into that, like maybe your boot choice is something different, a lot of the time it's just worth to sit on that for the only laning phase. You only lose about 90 gold or so. It's very negligible in that regard, but it seems like to be the hyper extrapolation of that ideal. Be interested to see what direction he goes in with that. We'll keep you updated and posted in that regard, but for now, quite a slow game.
Yeah, I think this is a great point to touch on why people don't tend to go for that, and why as well teams value damage profile differentiation between their jungle and solo lanes. Cody could be opening up, is level 6, got to hold the point.
Next is ping 6 just about and about here. Chameleus kinds to counter engage, exhaust comes out. He is ticking here. One that comes out in response, one more auto, but it's going to be the trade-off of 2 combat summoners. The exhaust and ignite is burned by GameWard in response for the ignite. Mirage bot lane very happy with this trade-off.
Importantly, we still have the Featherstorm for Inax, so keeping safe, getting back out from any sort of danger, still a possibility for the GameWard bot lane. It has flash as well, so the escapability still certainly present, but overall a good little engagement that generates a lead for the Mirage Elyandra bot lane. They push the wave under the turret, they're going to get a slight experience and gold lead from that. It's going to be a couple minions missed under the turret, and as well as that, you know, they get back to base, they get a good reset on the play. Unfortunately, there's not necessarily too much to garner from that reset. It is strictly that laning advantage. GameWard have already taken down the Rift Herald, and that window where you may look to reset and move top lane is unfortunately taken away from the fact that GameWard just pick up the Drake or pick up the Rift Herald for themselves.
Yeah, completely and utterly. Much as we've anticipated, I think going to be the case that until Cody's on this Twitch gets you a few more items, Mirage is going to find it difficult to contest a lot of these objectives. Obviously, early Dragon and Rift Herald going the way of GameWard, not exactly how you would expect it to go, maybe. Normally the trade-off occurs in that early stage, but GameWard, unlike Oplon, were able to find that Dragon in a slightly earlier window with that priority and then go for the Rift Herald afterwards. Where are you expecting this Rift Herald to be going?
I think top lane could be a good matchup to sway either way. I do think that this is a very volatile matchup between the Akali and the Gwen. If you can get some leads onto either side, they can really start to snowball that side lane, an area of the map that we expected could see a lot of priority thrown towards it. With Bad Lulu opting straight toward this Riftmaker as well, if they're able to, you know, prevent this Akali from getting there all that quickly, that could put GameWard in a pretty good position and could help out Melonic strictly in that 1 versus 1. But I think that any lane really has its reasons. I'm certainly happy enough with the top lane, but wouldn't be surprised elsewhere as GameWard continually finding a bit of pressure down here.
Engage from Cody Sun. He's looking for the ultimate in response. Inax responds in due time.
So this time they get the Featherstorm. Slowly but slowly, they're whittling away at the cooldowns of GameWard. Now the exhaust going to be back up for Inax the next time round that they go for it, but this sets up now for a potential dive. If they can set up for a way to get pushed in for a Mega Crash to come through, they can use Rangjun plus Memento to get down into this bot lane and try and force a dive even underneath the turret. The defensive tool's not particularly there for Inax. And you can see already on the map that with Memento there, this Dragon already live, that lack of Xayah ulti could well prove to be a difference maker. Quickness is available. Mirage does have a lot of tools to engage with if they want it. Both of these teams are looking very heavily down toward this Dragon, and this could be a good time to use that Herald Jake in the mid lane and force a little bit of priority, force an answer from Rangjun.
Ace is normally the way that we've seen this matchup be played. Like getting a lot of pressure and that making it hard for Rangjun to move here. They have started off here. Off to the side, it seems like Mirage wants this somewhat. Yellow's going to have to sack away if he chooses to contest. I'm down to a 50-50. Who's going to get it? It's going to be Akabani that finds it. Hostile takeover's not going to do much. They dodged out from it. Memento's going to go low. First blood does go over to Cody-san. Jekyll in. He has flash though. First blood for the Dragon for the side of GameWard.
2 Spirit Charges. He just zones Rangjun around the side of mid lane. Forces priority once again through the mid lane, but GameWard fall for first blood. They do secure themselves Drake number 2 though, and that sets them up quite nicely for what is going to be another Infernal map. Obviously damage out of all 4 carry roles this time around, no tanks, so there is a lot of power, a lot of benefits to getting those Infernal Souls, not just to getting the Infernal Soul, not just the soul itself, but the dragons individually, obviously adding a nice extra boost to the damage sources that we're going to be getting. Interestingly enough, Checkerlad still goes for the Everfrost, despite the slight nerf that did come through on 12-11. The slow and root duration decreased by 0.5 seconds, is now just a 1-second stun, so we'll see if, particularly when the Merc Treads are in for Rangjun, that layered CC by Checkerlad does, still exist, or if he gets caught out a little bit by those changes.
Absolutely, and interesting. I would have maybe liked him to go for a slightly more damage-oriented makeup, whatever. That Everfrost nerf coming through. I do understand it. I think it's still a pretty good option in terms of just providing CC for your Rakan working there, but going forward, I know that Nymira talks a lot about how really important, especially in compositions like this, where I think it's really difficult for you to die ever. I don't think you're ever really the brunt of a lot of the formal engage from Mirage. I think picking out that Dark Seal early, allowing it to stack up, getting out more Magi's at some point is very, very good, especially with some of the damage nerfs as well. Allows you to keep up that damage.
If I may play devil's advocate here, Checkerlads needs to be the magic damage on the team isn't as high because they have Melonic. And the necessity for the thing like a Ludens for a Magi's to come through isn't necessarily as high because he's got Melonic to fall back on and can play this more supportive magic damage style. And I'm not saying either one is strictly better this game. I'm just trying to, talk through what may be going through the heads.
No, I do agree that I think Everfrost is good this game in terms of just providing that general setup for that initial engage you might find. You find that charm, you can follow up with that Everfrost, and it does allow your team to find these very quick picks, which they will need in these extended 5v5s. I think it owes to that, but I think beyond that, a little bit of damage is helpful in terms of just kind of rounding out your damage portfolio, damage profile. I think it could be good.
Either way, 2 Drakes secured by GameWard now, and regardless of Checkerlad's build, they are going to be doing a lot more damage on the RE if they pick up the 2 Infernals that would like to follow for GameWard, and constantly pushing in this mid lane as you'd have hoped for. Don Jake, you asked early on, can he have Perma-Prio and not letting this Galio freely roam around the Rift, and that has largely been the case. Heroes' entrances have been largely unanswered.
The Everfrost engage, it stops Memento for a second or so. Akabani's going to have to ult over the wall any second now, but tries to find Memento first. Could have probably actually ulted in there, I think. I think it was almost impending death if he did so, but maybe bought a little bit of time with that W. He's going to have the chance to do it now. He gets it now. Dodges out from the hostile takeover as well. Engaged onto Raxo, but Cody-san's doing a lot of damage. Can't find a few more autos that he needs. Maybe a quick kill onto Memento.
Nice little trade up there for GameWard. You talked about going in for that execute, and they could have done, but it would have been a 50-50 on the bailout whether they'd have got the kill back onto Akabane and kept the Wukong alive. But they bide their time. Akabane stalls it out, and then a little bit of greed from Memento tries to stick around for the crab that he has no business staying for. Akabane goes in, executes, gets out to safety, and even through the hostile takeover, there's no response kill for Mirage. This may well mean that they can try and set up now for a play around this Rift Herald, but with everybody back up and alive, you can see that they're not too happy to head over towards that one. Slightly delayed on their reset timings means that they're not going to just necessarily beeline for it And I think that the respawn timer as well certainly didn't set them up too well for success.
No, completely agree with you in that way. Rude dude. Okay, so what are you saying? Around about 30 CS lead. Gonna be slightly less now with that 6, around about 24 now. CS lead in that mid lane, Checker Lad really pushing that advantage. It's not the expected thing, or rather unexpected thing that we saw from Saken when he was able to build up that CS advantage. Checker Lad, tenured laner, operating at around 11 CS or so right now. Going to be even more when he gets that top wave. With that dragon spawning in, we're expecting to see that swap come out. Play for that third dragon.
And I would be really... I want Inax and the rest of GameWard now to really go for this. They've hit Gale Force. They're so close to hitting Horizon Focus on Checolad. I think that he's going to have that off of base. He has TP as well, so he can maybe try and cheat that tempo a little bit and get down in time. It looks like it's going to be a run down from top side. But Drake number 3 is live GameWard with pretty much complete control. There's one pink ward sort of peeking into the pit at this point. But in terms of river vision, they are largely starved out. Camellia spots out this one in the bot side of the brush. They're already starting this up. TP in as well from Rangshun.
You have to look at Cody here. He's the man here in terms of what angle can he find to get onto these tertiary targets in this team fight. Shekolad off to the side here. Almost finds Cody but gets engaged on. He's going to have to ult out now. Memento's used the ultimate already. Melonic down to about 50% of HP or so. Has that ultimate charming out now. 30%, 20% HP for Memento now. And Lulu off to the side now. Chekolad goes back in. Can't quite find Memento. In margins is it right now, but they've engaged onto Bad Lulu now. He goes into Shroud. Galio comes out in response here. Chakalad tries to stop the rest of the team from getting to him. He's done a good job so far. Memento goes back in, but they found Akabane. Camilius goes low as well. It's 2 kills from Mirage so far. And what looked like a good initial engage, they were able to stave off a lot of the initial burst from Mirage, but they get caught out too here. We can't quite see what's going on in the background here. Do get the pan over, and Inax is coming up huge here. Rangjun, they get taken out here. Cody's son trying to do a little bit more damage. Seems like Mirage might have gone slightly too far forward. Chefelad playing very slow, playing very well. Teleport comes out back to the front of him. It's going to be Bad Ludo coming in now. Doesn't have the ultimate in response, but it is 3 kills that are found on the back of that by GameWard. Reset.
Memento still so low here as well. Smite available.
Go in. Smite is available. Can they get him down? They don't quite do it. W over the wall now. Bad Lulu going to be hard pressed to get out here. Inax is quite low. Has to play his ranges quite well. Flashes away from Memento, who couldn't get the Q out. Memento that has no mana though. Maybe off to the side. He doesn't have the engage that you'd like from him. Melonic
Needleworks back.
finds Memento.
It's so scrappy. It's a long, drawn-out fight. I think the important thing to take away from that is Mirage deny soul point. It puts them another 5 minutes on the board. And we see just... you must have been going for a solid minute there, Jake, because that was back, forth, back again, and we were, swinging round about like it was nobody's business. The seesaw was topping and turning as well. GameWard started out on the back foot. Mirage had a very good initial fight, and I was thinking, okay, 2 for 0, you get the Drake, you back away. They had different plans entirely. They got this 2 for 0, and then they chase too far forward. They use hostile takeover, but it doesn't go well for them. They get re-engaged on. They give an Inax a kill to come back with. He, then steps forward with the rest of his team to try and, 3v4 effectively stop the dragon. They manage to do so, but then they go too far forward. Bad Lulu's TP comes back through, and it's all a massive mess. Like I say, the important thing to take away is that Mirage find themselves denying the soul point and getting themselves a couple kills as well. Cody's son opening up at the right time, had that right angle for the start of the fight, and started out with some good damage. Needs to see if that continues here, now working toward that Noon Quiver off the back of the Blade of the Ruin King completion. And I'm going to be curious about the build path that he goes for. Remember, Kraken Slayer slightly nerfed on 12-11, but is just far and away one of the best, the best mythic or hyper carries.
I completely agree with you. Feels like this game is coming in like quite short bursts. It's like long, elongated, non-action, and then just like these very explosive, long, drawn-out team fights. Making me, at least, have to catch my breath here. 2 dragons to 1. Important takeaways there. Mirage did get that dragon. Shekalad. Let's see Everfrost here. Akabane's here, but hostile takeover. They will dodge out from it.
Oh no. Ari auto attacks. Akabane.
Very painful.
Yeah, he really did not care about those. As long as Akabane dodged out, he was absolutely fine. Set up around the Baron, though, now for both of these teams. You can see large amount of vision placed down by Mirage to try and stop stop any impending Baron take to come through. They do have a slightly better ADC for taking the Barons, but top laners, though, largely favouring GameWard in terms of their Baron speed Neither of the team's going to focus around that just yet in terms of actually trying to hit it. More so just a lot of vision to control the situation that's going on over there. And for the next couple of minutes, we can probably see the game default back to a fairly slow pacing, fairly slow pace action. I wouldn't expect anybody to hop to that Baron very quickly. The likelihood is that we see one of these. Oh, the Baron's up when Drake's up. Let's just trade. That's type situations that we've come across a few times.
Completely. Mirage is circling around the Baron now. Late anticipation in terms of what they're going to be able to do here. Camilius might be able to find Raxo here. Find the trigger here. He does find it onto Cody's Sun instead, though. He's going to get engaged on. Cody's Sun does not have flash just yet. Galio has saved him somewhat. Memento's found in. Akabone's had to ult out. Inax goes down. Bad Lulu's coming up huge. It's 2 kills for Mirage here. Jekyll was not even involved. Jekyll goes forward. Everfrost onto Raxo. They're trying to find it, but they're going to find Akabane instead. Double kill for Bad Lulu. We spoke about that upset you were expecting, or not expecting rather, but could be absolutely disastrous, and it's somewhat happening so far with these team fights continue to go Mirage's way.
But of course, Chaco handshake doesn't find the engagement they're looking for, but it's Mirage that turn around the play. They have such good re-engage, they have such good disengage tools as well. They use the Galio ulti to deny Codyson's death. There is Checo still off on the side, but he's not enough to prevent this Baron going down, and in a 5 versus 1 situation, Memento, the rest of Mirage, rack up the Baron, put themselves now in a good spot. This is the engagement that started it all. Inax Gale forces forward, a really well-timed exhaust by Cody stops him from just getting obliterated outright, and then nice re-engage, nice support from Memento, from Bad Lulu, to stop anything else from going awry. Memento takes down Camilius, and you mentioned Bad Lulu at the start of the fight. It was a really good flank angle to get him in and get him onto the backline. That Featherstorm only good for blocking so many things. Of course, when you've got 3 dive champions, 4 if you count, you know, the way that the switch goes forward. There's only so many things you can Featherstorm, and at a certain point, you are just going to fall to something else.
How important it was for Mirage to kind of show up in this game. Some slightly easier games down on the schedule. This would be a very uphill battle for them. They've contested heavily, now managing to pull themselves slightly in front. It is going to be GameWard to pick up this 3rd dragon, which is not exactly how you would have expected it to go after the fact that they've managed to pick the Baron up here. Mirage have dedicated this Galio towards the top side now with a flash available from Range, and they're going to be counter-engaging. Memento does use the ult, but doesn't quite hit him here. Malonix need to find a little bit more HP here, but this could be disastrous. They find the turret, though. And what could have gone even worse, they do manage to get the kill just about there, but there's a lot of resources that are expended in exchange for that 3rd dragon.
It's close. It's close. They do get the kill on the top side. They also take tier 2 turret, but they do give up soul points. So they're putting themselves on a timer here. They're saying to to GameWard, okay, come 5 minutes time, we are willing to fight. You will be willing to take any sort of engagement, and I don't mind that philosophy. They're going to have a Carly Twitch late game, which is certainly something to be fearful of if you are GameWard. But there's always that pressure of the 50-50 that goes awry if Akabane can find his way into the pit, sneak a steal, and then the Infernal Soul has gone over. Gold lead, though, over to Mirage, largely off the back of that Baron, the tier 2 turret. They found one in the bot lane too. But somehow this mid-tier 1 standing in the mid lane in a pretty good position as well. They've got enough people here to try and defend it, and ADC up against Baron Duck minions always feels a little bit rough, you know, slowly chipping your way through. But for the most part, GameWard right now just licking their wounds a little bit, recognizing, okay, well, that fight didn't go how it was supposed to. Let's see what we can do to reassess, reevaluate, and maybe take the next fight in a bit better standing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an important thing. Important way that you've expressed that, Rude Dude, is that after that initial gauge, Shekelah might be in a little bit of trouble here. He does get caught out by Rax, so he's going to be able to ult away. Doesn't use the blast cone, doesn't trust himself quite enough to get away from that. Didn't quite see who else was here. Shekelah does go in here, doesn't find anything apart from the Wukong clone. Everfrost goes on to Camilius. Another tier 2 turret, but traded for a tier 1 in the top side.
I wonder what else Melonic can get. These resets coming through on time means that Mirage should be able to stop that tier 2 from falling. Don't think the Gwen has anywhere near enough damage to cut through that in that time frame. But a two turrets in the mid lane to come off the back of that Baron, pretty much job done for Mirage. I think that's about as good as you get. You get a lot of economy turrets down. That top bot lane tier 2 still stands, but overall, they've opened up a lot of the map as well. With those mid turrets falling, it gives you a lot more access into the enemy's jungle to set up for the likes of this Infernal Soul fight that we expect to see for the Baron fight that we expect to see a little later on as well. And if my maths is correct, I think that those timers are going to be very closely overlapped. So shot calling on our teams is going to be very important as well. It's Cody and Bush going for Checo here. Has ulti though.
Cody, the open comes out. Exhaust is here. Might have thought the Shekola didn't have that ult from that previous foray in their jungle, but it has come off of cooldown. Able to find his way out. Exhaust bone here from Cody-san means that he won't quite have the stopping power that he did previously when Camilius flashed upon his face. Something to note for this next exchange between these two teams.
That's feels bad, honestly. You saw him use the fight. You take one reset, come back out, and then immediately the ulti's back up again. That's just Ahri things, unfortunately. With the Everfrost as well, you do get a nice little bonus to the ability haste. Nevertheless, though, a nice attempted play. You can see the proactivity from Mirage starting to shine through as well. You burn that Spirit Rush, and they have this small window of time where Checo has to play a little bit more cognizantly, and will have to be a little bit more careful with the steps that he makes, the moves that he takes. I feel like I'm falling into song here. Don Jake, please save me.
You feel like you're falling into song?
Every move he makes, every step he takes.
Oh, that is a good song, to be fair. Every move you make, every step I take, I'll be watching you.
Well, you know what? I asked you to help me, and I think you've just excelled, honestly. You
excelled.
Helped by doing it better than I did.
Well, one of the power points for GameWard so far is the fact they have gotten these 3 dragons so far. That next dragon going to be spawning up in around 2 minutes or so, I believe. It's going to be very important for them to get this soul. Important to note as well, Mirage and Co did have that Baron. They were able to bolster their gold lead slightly forward. They've taken the 3k gold lead in response to staring down that soul condition, but that means they need to be precise and aim true when that dragon comes up. Otherwise, that Infernal Soul is going to give GameWard that edge in terms of even despite the gold lead.
Now Drake and Baron all coming up within a minute now. A little bush bait coming through.
Going to engage here. Inax goes on to Memento. Has to flash away here. Shekola comes out with a crucial stun here. Can they find Memento? He's gone into it. He's not going to be able to find the reset. Memento goes down. Barney gets a reset here. Malonic's got a great flank here. Here comes Shekola as well. They found Ratso. Cody-san goes into stasis as well. It's a massive fight for GameWard. Back down, Inax does go around as well, but it is going to be 4 kills. Cody finds his way out here. Inax does go down, but Dragon's spawning in, and the Baron as well. They might just have their choice of both.
I mean, they're probably going to try and get their cake, eat it too. We'll have to see if Bad Lulu can try and trade back for the Dragon on the bot side, but GameWard prioritizing this Baron because it's alive now. Crucial fight for GameWard right there. One initiated by Mirage, one that doesn't go their way. Spirit Rush for Chekolad, Flash for Inax. They are enough tools to get out to safety and save themselves from the fight going too drastically awry. They find a beautiful flank from Melonic as well. Came in from downtown and just caught Mirage absolutely unawares. Pincered to within an inch of their lives. And yeah, it is the cake. It's got sprinkles on top. There's a cherry as well. Anything else that you want on top of that order? It's an Infernal Soul.
Yeah, GameWard really sending Mirage the message that they bottled it there. Taking away the Baron and the Soul condition. You've got to wonder, like, with this much thievery occurring, surely they're going to have to call the police soon.
You'd like to think that was borderline daylight robbery based off of this fight. I like that Melonic is coming up from this bot side, and that's just not really seeing. You get this double engage, but Inax and Chekolad able to get in there. The layering of CC not quite ready for Mirage, and then this stasis prevents the trade back, prevents the bailout from coming through, and then they re-engage off the back of Melonic's flank here. Cody goes into stasis, but it's very little avail. Rangshun is absolutely head between his legs, no idea where to go, and after that re-engage came through from Melonic, it really felt like Mirage didn't really have an answer. GameWard, though, with the Baron, with the Infernal Soul, they're the ones now that are going to be asking the questions.
Any questions being answered thus far? Mirage obviously had that gold lead. We spoke about how important it was for them. They were able to extend that through getting some side lane turrets with that Baron. Would have liked them to maybe have staved off this win condition for GameWard, but GameWard have come up golden around this 30-minute mark. Find that previous team fight, did find that previous soul, and now with that Baron are staring down, acquiescing this gold lead and further ping-ponging it back in their direction.
2 turrets fallen in the mid lane, maybe the first one that they've taken off of this Baron, but they took a top lane tier 2 turret as well. The pressure for GameWard is still on, certainly. They still know that they're going to be playing up against a late game Twitch if Cody picks up that third item. There's the Runans, and late game Twitch is certainly something to be fearful of. Right now we're sat on a lot of attack speed, not necessarily the flat AD to try and back it up, so we are relying on a little bit of the damage profile of the Twitch, those abilities more so than anything else to try and help out in that regard. No Infinity Edge yet completed for Inax either, though. Milius gets a little bit checked, but does manage to battle dance and grand entrance as a grand exit more so than anything else. We look at where the gold lies for GameWard, and once again, it's Checolad. 4 items completed on the Ari. We may be criticizing the build, but here's the Infernal Soul, and a little bit scared of the damage that he doesn't have, but with 4 items, he's more than ready.
Engage here, but Camillus goes low, but he's able to get out here. Memento's in stasis with the Galio ult. In response is Akabane. He tries to find the reset. Memento goes into the bailout, but it's going to be Akabane getting the reset.
Checo,
Bad Lulu's in stasis. Checolad's in and out. Hold me closer, Tiny Dancer. Polish ballet dancer goes in, he goes out, he finds the kill. GameWard continue to mountain themselves forward. Enemy opposition.
Baron wears off, but there's 2 members dead for Mirage. Dashing forward, Melonic fears no enemy on their team, and honestly, they could try and push for the game. It looks like that bot lane inhibitor is going to be all. They don't have the wave there, so I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Well, 2 kills, an inhibitor on the bot side of the map. When Baron's going to be spawning within the next 3 minutes or so, that inhibitor timer is going to be 5 minutes long, so going to have those 2 pressure windows overlapping. This is that team fight. They think, okay, we see Checolad mid lane, we kind of have to go now, but they just stall it out really well, the GameWard. We've got Camillus who's able to quickness and run away, and Rangjun here really not in the right spot after that fight comes to fruition. He needs to try and, keep in the front line, keep his team alive if anything, but just not in the right spot to help out as a beautiful flank from Checolad comes through and manages to set up for that beautiful Everfrost into the rest of the team following through. And again, you mentioned it when he got Ari in draft phase, Don Jake, that the second Checolad gets Ari, he looks for these flanks. Done it here in this game, done it in that fight in particular, and just setting up gorgeously for the fighting in general.
He can't keep getting away with this. Checolad, every game he gets these picks. On champions like the Zoe, on the Ari as well, prevalent, just able to always find the angle, thread the needle, just do an absolute masterclass for his team, and done it again. And now GameWard very much heading towards that 6-1 that they so desperately crave, to be in that tied first position for however long they might be able to until the LDLC game later, potentially.
And I was really curious as well about the way the draft had gone down, because we saw 2 different sets of priority, right? We saw Mirage very heavily focusing the Twitch Renata as a bot lane, and GameWard blind picked both their solo laners. They went for Gwen, they went for the Ari, and said, we take these, we value these above all else. And we really are kind of getting to see why. The Twitch hasn't had the foothold in the game that we were expecting was the carry force for the early stage of the game for Mirage, but Cody really hasn't been able to step up to that plate and continue to find the team fights that were necessary. He's getting picked off. He's got to deal with Checo and Melonic, 2 very devastating carries in these late game fights. Rabadon's completed for the Gwen, 4 items now, has reached that level 18 marker. So the buffs, or the nerfs to Gwen, now completely irrelevant since we've reached max capacity of her. Those buffs no longer in effect, or the nerfs no longer in effect. As you can see, Mirage, they're sort of having to slowly clear out bush by bush to try and get toward the Elder Spawn. That's not very easy either.
Barney with a bit of a false fire there. I mean that confidence is in the head of Memento if it comes up to a 50-50 on the Elder. I do think the Mirage are going to be hard pressed to find their way into this area. Cody-san has to find an absolutely wonderful angle with Rangjun as well, able to find himself, navigate, get some flashy mechanics out. It's going to have to be the case that Cody-san gets so far into a decent flank and is able to flash out any sort of charm or CC from Camillus. He doesn't have the Gale Force to reposition himself as well. He's just got to do so much here. I really can't stress that enough. Bad Lulu as well, probably going to have to find an execute. Really, they are very hard pressed to kind of get anywhere near this Elder Dragon.
Yeah, the way that this game is going to play out, if Mirage are able to win, it's going to be with the most minutest of mechanical, the 1% mechanical fight that they have to pull out. They've made their way into the river, though. They have found access, but Cody, with the rest of the team here, doesn't have that flank angle to open up on. Not necessarily the worst thing in the world for a Twitch. Charm.
There's a lot of damage that's been found onto Memento. That Infernal Soul charming down. Don't massively enjoy the engagement from Camillus. Give Memento a little bit of HP back from here. Gilda's gone down. Close to 6,000. Checkerlad's going to continuously try and find these charms off to the side. In a few seconds or so, he will have that available. It comes down to a 50-50. Goes forward once more, has flash for one more try. No dashes thus far. Rangjun's off to the side. Lulu also trying to find that flank. No charm from Checkerlad. 5,000. Melonic, they're going to bad Lulu. Save him off for now.
So close. Knife's edge fight. One engage could seal the deal. Cody comes out of ambush. Still has rat-a-tat-tat.
See Galio now.
Crucial ultimates still available. Checo used his Spirit Rush, but that's back up again already.
And just like that, Checkerlad over the wall there. Spirit rushing his way to the enemy Nexus in a second or so, you'd imagine. That's going to all but secure the Elder Dragon for him. That's going to be Rangjun flashing onto Melonic, but that's not the one that you want here. Melonic's not taking any damage. They're going to find Rangjun almost immediately in the background. You can see that Elder Dragon is being taken. I'm expecting to see that teleport from Checkerlad into the mid lane any second now. Bot lane, sorry, does have the flank here now. Zonya's available as well. Who can he find? Who can he fish for? Memento engages onto initially. Hostile takeover. He does Zonya's. Melonic's gone in. Cody's son's going to get taken out by this Elder Dragon. It's a killing spree. It's another kill for Checkerlad. And just like that, what looked like it could have been a somewhat even fight. Bad Lulu was trying to find the flank. Checkerlad finds him, gets the charm out. He turns the game on his head. GameWard move up to 6-1, tied for first. In anticipation of our game against with LDOC later in the day.
Wow. That was a fight. That was a game that Mirage had in their grasp. They'd done the hard work through the early stages, but unfortunately, just one misstep in the mid game costs them dearly. They get caught a little bit out in the mid lane, over-aggressing for a fight that they can't quite execute on. We saw Inax able to use Featherstorm, use Gale Flush, and pretty much play Xayah. And the Xayah pick, we talked about the value that it got through the amount of dive that was generated in that second round of draft from or up against GameWard. But ultimately, the Xayah was able to have benefit. When that engage came through, we saw Melonic come out on the flank. We saw Checkerlad find another angle of entry.